You strive for your justice, and I strive for mine. We're both just ordinary men who have been driven to seek vengeance in the name of justice. And if one comes to call vengeance justice, such justice will only breed further vengeance and trigger a vicious cycle of hatred.
The cycle of hatred is the perpetuation of conflict and animosity between groups or individuals. It is a self-reinforcing cycle in which one group's actions provoke retaliation from the other group, leading to further retaliation and escalation in the overall conflict. In the Land of Waves arc, we're introduced to Zabuza, who was a ninja who was manipulated, exploited, and forced to do immoral acts against his will. This becomes perpetuated with Haku. Haku was manipulated and used by Zabuza because he learned that manipulation was what was needed to get to places in this world. At the end of the arc, thanks to some talk no jutsu from Naruto, he feels guilty for manipulating Haku and attacks the boss, stopping the cycle of manipulation at its core. We tend to think that violence, war, and conflict only really arise from a singular egomaniac going out of control. But in truth, human conflict is much more complicated than that. There are often nexuses and complex relationships that undergird it. And it doesn't help that everyone's understanding of war is merely World War II, in which the common conception of the war is basically just an evil guy with a funny mustache randomly deciding he would take over the world. And on that note, our conception of slavery is basically just white people irrationally hating black people and stealing them from their motherland to enslave them unjustly. Even shows I really like Fullmetal Alchemist and Avatar, have this cartoonishly simple understanding of war. And shows like this probably play a significant role in perpetuating our caricatured idea. It's kind of unfortunate. Truth is, we all have the potential for inconceivable evil given different circumstances, historical precedents, and upbringing. Psychological studies have routinely proven that we will deny obvious truth and simulate killing people if pressured to do so. So what does Naruto have to say about this? Let's skip a few arcs.
I know the past and can foretell our future. It is the same as our history. So we believe that human beings simply cannot understand each other, and they never will.
Pain believed that uniting the world through silly means like friendship and camaraderie was feeble and childish. He believed that the only way to unite the world was through a shared sense of pain. He sought peace through oppression. His plan was to collect all the tailed beasts, harness their power, and give that power to every nation, that way they could use it as jutsu of mass destruction. And once every village inevitably uses the jutsu against each other, they will amass large amounts of destruction and pain upon each other. And then it's through that shared sense of pain that they would look to create peace among each other and not fight in wars anymore. In a sense, I understand this. Negative emotions elicit a stronger response than positive emotions. Psychologically speaking, losing $20 feels much worse than gaining $20. And speaking from personal experience, you don't really understand how great good health is until you become sick or injured. So more people are more inspired to take action to not lose things as opposed to taking action to gain things. And culturally, we have the understanding that abundance makes you prideful and ungrateful, while depravity makes you thankful. On this note, similar to what I talked about in my Iroh video on Stoicism, pain is a component of compassion. The very word compassion has its etymology rooted in suffering. The prefix of "come," seen in words like camaraderie, means association with other people. Passion, on the other hand, means to suffer. Taken together, compassion means to suffer with someone. So to suffer with someone is literally what it means to be compassionate. While his goal is admirable and his means have solid psychology substantiating it, it is ultimately wrong. Pain forgot how to empathize with people, and so he imposes this idea onto them. Ignoring the inherent hypocrisy of saying humans can't understand each other while simultaneously trying to unite them through a shared understanding of pain, it isn't actually clear that this would actually work. We may associate scarcity with kindness, but scarcity can just as easily make people fight fervently for resources. Paradoxically, most wars have actually been fought over a lack of resources. So it's entirely possible, if not likely, that the jutsu nuclear bombs would end up just escalating. If you nuke me, for example, I'm just gonna nuke you back harder to the point where you can't nuke me back, and then I'll just come over, take your land, and whatever resources you have left. Payne's plan is a clear allegory to the Cold War. It's where all these countries got these nuclear bombs and didn't use them against each other due to what was called mutually assured destruction. But there's some problems with this. First of all, in the real world, no one actually used these nuclear bombs. We just tested them out and threatened to use them, but never actually did. We just kept doing our good old people combat. And so it's entirely possible that the chocolate or nuclear bomb wouldn't actually deter war at all. The only reason America was able to and actually did use nuclear bombs in World War II was because no one else had it at the time, and that wouldn't be the case in Naruto. If other nations had nuclear bombs while America had nuclear bombs, and America used their nuclear bombs, that would bring us back to our original problem, which I highlighted just a minute ago. So what's the solution? Let's go back to the Land of Waves. In the Land of Waves arc, we see how Haku, instead of continuing the cycle of manipulation in ever more novel and twisted ways, chose empathy and forgiveness. This inspired Zabuza to enact righteous justice against the source of manipulation. Similarly, after defeating Pain, Naruto felt a huge burden of hatred. He wanted to kill Pain for killing his sensei, his village, and his mentor, but he didn't. He chose peace and forgiveness. Despite his circumstance, he chose to be objectively good. This is the only antidote to the cycle of hatred that contains substantive change. We have to change our hearts and choose objective goodness in order to bring lasting, substantive peace. The only way to stop the cycle of hatred is by choosing forgiveness. Forgiveness is the synergy of peace and empathy. Jesus said it best when he said that we should forgive our wrongdoers 70 times 7 times. Forgiveness is knowing that people around you did something bad, but choosing not to enact vengeance. Forgiveness undoes hatred and frees you from a troubling past. There are many misconceptions about forgiveness discussed by the Christian psychologist Everett Worthington. Forgiveness does not mean forgetting, as the adage goes. If the experience was painful and extraordinary, it will probably never be forgotten. It also isn't acting like you forgot about it either. There may be completely valid reasons for you to now tread lightly in that area. Forgiveness also doesn't mean reconciliation. Reconciliation is an ideal that we should hopefully strive towards, but sometimes it isn't possible because the injurer is dead, or it would be unwise because they are dangerous. And beyond that, reconciliation requires the cooperation of 2 or more parties. Forgiveness only requires 1 party. Forgiveness also doesn't mean that we pretend that nothing was wrong. The reason we're ordered to forgive is precisely because something bad happened. And finally, forgiveness does not mean foregoing justice. That may seem perplexing, but forgiveness is about not taking revenge, not refusing to carry out justice. Justice is an impersonal matter mediated through impartial legal authorities. Justice is concerned with righting a wrong. To use that one example we always come back to, the just thing to do after white people freed the slaves would be to help the black people by properly integrating them into the culture and legally lifting their humanity to the level of white people. What revenge would dictate is forcing white people to go through years of slavery in order to get back at them. Interestingly enough, this sort of thing actually kind of happened. In the 1800s, America actually sent some black slaves back to Africa where they colonized Liberia. What ended up happening as a result was that the previous black slaves were even more oppressive and dehumanizing to the native population than the whites were to the black slaves in America. Yes, they even forced them to work in fields and plantations.
In 1822, the American Colonization Society began sending Black Americans back to Africa, and over the course of 4 decades, some 13,000 former slaves and their descendants moved to Africa to start a new life. And in an ironic twist of fate, the Americo-Liberians would go from oppressed to oppressor as they denied the indigenous population civic rights in much the same way as the white elites in America were treating the black population. Large numbers of indigenous Liberians would find themselves working in fields and on rubber plantations, producing cash crops for exportation by Americo-Liberian companies.
They did all of this because they acted in a spirit of revenge and not justice. Revenge is concerned with vindictive satisfaction. Justice is concerned with what is right. Justice is designed to create closure, which is actually a very important part of forgiveness. This helps stop the cycle of hatred right there. Forgiveness requires a humble and gracious heart. It isn't just the actions that you do, but the heart that you have that creates real, substantive change. And this, I believe, is why Jesus cares so much about the heart of our actions, not just the actions themselves. There's a phrase in the Bible that I'm sure we're all too familiar with. It's very simple. It says, don't judge. However, the full quote is don't judge or you too will be judged. For with the judgment you pronounce, you too will be judged, and with that measure, it will be used to measure against you. Why do you see the speck in your brother's eye but not notice the log in your own eye? It's saying that you should judge people with the same standard that you're willing to apply to yourself. Whatever degree of scrutiny you judge others will be hoisted onto yourself. It also talks about how we notice problems with other people, but we never really focus on our own problems. This sheds an insightful light on the very heart of human conflict. We are quick to judge and callously critique other people and their behavior when we ourselves would do the same thing in different scenarios. The only way to overcome this, again, is to forgive those who hurt you and be humble enough to recognize their potential for evil. Forgiveness isn't just choosing to act humanely and refraining from vengeance. It is doing so with humane intentions while letting go of the negative emotions that come from it through empathy with the wrongdoer. And I don't think that we need a shared sense of pain and agony to accomplish this. It isn't even clear that this would be an effective way to do it. We need a population grounded in a robust, common sense of morality and truth in order to get this done. We need a good sense of truth to get this done. Thank you for watching.